Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Parishscope, the podcast of St. John's Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Chris Sansom.
And I'm Casey Dreamus. I'm the contemporary DPG.
Yep, DPG. What was that? What the terminology? We had a
I know
director of praise music guy.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Week to week, I'll probably mix up the letters because of dyslexia, but I'll just confidently say it every
Yeah, well,
week.
yeah, it's DPG. It works. It works. Tonight, everybody, is a special episode. Corey over here and I, I'm sticking with it.
You going with it?
I'm sticking with it. No, Casey and I, we've been talking about this. We've been talking about, and we've been saying, hey, one of these days we're going to do a Halloween episode. And yes. I thought, we got Trunk or Treat coming up. So if you didn't know, Good Shepherd has a Trunk or Treat this coming Friday, I believe. I think it's October 20th. And don't ask me when that starts. I know it starts at some point, probably like or 5 or 6. But anyway, they have their Trunk or Treat. And so, it's like one of those things that we need to talk about and say, hey, first of all, should we be celebrating Halloween?
Yeah.
Right? That's a huge thing.
Big question.
Should we be celebrating Halloween as Christians? And then, of course, the next question, which is the really big one that I think will take a lot more of our time than anything. What kind of candy? What's our favorites, right? And why is it our favorite? Because these are all questions that everybody that's listening to this needs to know. And, of course, we'll have to have a Taylor Swift update. I'm joking. I really don't know anything. I mean, I know she's still dating Kelsey or whatever his name is.
By the way, the Trunk or Treat is from 5 to 7.
5 to 7. Somebody's got
Friday.
a phone and just looked things up.
We should have a guy. We need to get one of the youth group kids we need to have a person.
We need a person.
Yeah.
We need a person.
So the young people listening to this podcast right now.
Yeah. The younger folk. So anyway, first off, let's start off with the big question, right? Halloween is coming up. A couple Tuesdays. It'll be October 31st, last day of the month. Should we celebrate it? Now, there's a lot of thoughts out there. I of course, as a pastor, I have a lot of opinions on this, of course. So that's a question that I, as a pastor, actually get quite a bit.
Right.
Like, should we be celebrating Halloween? Isn't it like satanic? Or, did it come from the Celtic? That's a big one.
Of course.
Well,
and I will say quickly that I have the fun, side of seeing this as someone who literally never did Halloween. My family didn't do Halloween. So we were the people who were like, it's represents Satan.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do it and all that stuff, which I will say this. I really don't feel like I lost anything. I don't feel like I was left out of anything.
I'm just going to say that. You didn't get the candy, dude. I didn't get the candy.
No, because I stayed at my great-grandma's house because we'd always have a party. I just didn't dress up and I would go. And then I just eat the candy that was like there, so I didn't really miss out on much. But anyway, just as a reference, yeah. So yes, it came from satanic rituals, right?
Right. That's the theory. Usually, the way I like to start this conversation is kind of like this, like. As a religion, Christianity has been around for a very long time. And as we have been around for a very long time, there have been moments in our history, blips on the map, if you will, where Christians have, they've just had some weird stuff. They've had weird beliefs. I think that's just, and a lot of them come from ignorance. So that's a huge part of this. There was a time in Christian history where we basically, as Christians, had this weird belief that something special happened on November 1st.
What was that special thing?
Well, I'll tell you the special thing is, because this is what it comes down to. So November 1st, and for those of you that maybe have been in the church for a while, maybe didn't realize this, because we always celebrate as a church, we always celebrate on the first Sunday in November, whatever that happens to be. Whether it's November 5th or 6th or whatever, it's always the first Sunday in November. We celebrate All Saints' Day. But yes. All Saints' Day is actually celebrated technically on November 1st, always November 1st. And All Saints' Day is a day when we remember those saints that have gone before us, those people that have died in the faith, that are now with Jesus. And so we read off the names of those saints that have gone before us. Some churches ring a bell. I think we do as well. We actually toll the bell. And it can be a very special occasion. A lot of times family members will gather to be there to remember their loved one. Over the years, though, and you can just imagine this, over the years, a kind of a tradition developed. And the tradition that came about was actually founded because of what they were doing. They were calling out the names of their loved ones. And it wasn't always just those that have passed away in the last year. Some of them were like much longer than that, going back much further than that, depending on where you were, what church you went to. But a belief came about. And the belief came about, remember, the Bible wasn't always written down in terms of like, it wasn't always, well, we have, I have something like 20 or 30 Bibles, like
bragger.
Right. Well, I mean, there was a time whenever, if you wanted to see a Bible, you had to go to the church because that was the only place you could see a handwritten Bible, because the printing press just didn't occur, didn't exist, wasn't invented yet, and all this kind of stuff. You get into like all kinds of manuscripts and all that kind of fun and exciting stuff, and so people didn't get a chance to read the Bible. In a lot of ways, we as a culture are very spoiled. We kind of say, well, how come they didn't know this? It's in this book of the Bible. Like, well, because they didn't have a Bible at home. Right. They had to go to church to hear it read or spoken.
Or go to a hotel. Okay, sorry. That was a dumb joke. But anyway.
No, the Gideons were around back then. Yay, Gideons. But anyway, so a belief arose. And the belief was that whenever the priest would call out the names of the loved ones, their soul was actually making a trip back. And with that belief, and you can kind of see the progression of this, with that belief came another belief. And it came about because of a question. You can just almost picture. I mean, I don't know how it really happened, but I like to envision like two guys sitting by a fire talking about this, going, if our loved one spirit's coming back, there's demons all over the place. And they're like lurking about. What if they get a hold of my loved one's spirit? And that's kind of the question that became a driving force. Mm-hmm. And so they developed this idea. The idea was they were going to dress up in some really scary costumes to scare away the demons as they got ready for All Saints' Day. And thus was born the tradition of Halloween. In fact, it's actually in the name. All Hallows Eve. In Old English, this would have been Hallow, and then the "een" at the end is actually a sign of Eve. It's the eve of All Hallows Day, or All Saints' Day. So on the eve of All Saints' Day, the tradition from like, I don't even know when, long time ago, was to dress up in scary, scary costumes to scare away demons so that the spirits of our loved ones wouldn't get taken advantage of by the demons that were about.
Right.
Yes.
So this is like a Christian holiday.
It's a Christian holiday from a very weird time.
Oh.
Very weird time.
Yeah. See that, Mom and Dad? Okay. Just kidding.
Now there has been a lot of stuff that's kind of come up over the years. Back in and around the turn of the century, from the 1700s to the 1800s, there was a lot of big names in the historical market that kind of posited some theories. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what it was. They actually posited theories of the way they thought things had kind of arisen. And a lot of them noticed that some Celtic holidays, specifically Celtic holidays, had a certain similarity to the way All Hallows Eve went, or Halloween went.
Oh, gotcha.
And so the theory was written down that basically Christians came into Celtic regions and basically, and again, this is the theory is that what they did was they saw what the Celtics were doing, and they said, well, that's no good because that's to false gods, so we're going to take over your holiday and Christianize it. Mm-hmm. And we know that this did actually happen. So before we go any further, we need to recognize that Gregory Saint Gregory, I think he was the IV, if I remember correctly, St. Gregory the Fourth or Gregory the Fourth or something like that. He was a pope, and he actually told his missionaries to do exactly that. So the idea on where this is coming from is not unprecedented. Like this is actually something that at least the Pope at the time, St. Gregory, actually told his missionaries to do. Like to if you see them having a great holiday, don't take the holiday from them, just Christianize the holiday kind of thing. And so we understand why that would be there. But the problem is the idea that this came from a Celtic holiday, well, there's just no way to prove it. A lot of people claim it was a part of something known as, and I'm gonna. This is where the problem comes in, where I actually read things, but I don't listen to things. Like it's called Samhain or something like that, and it's a Celtic word. It just means the end of summer. And a lot of people say, well, it was part of that holiday. Well, the problem is that feast, in terms of a holiday, didn't even come about until like the 12th or 13th century. There's one gentleman who is, again, right around 1820, 1830, something. His name was Keaton. He theorized that this is actually the origins of Halloween, and he talked about this whole episode with fire and mask and all this stuff, and he said this is the Celtic holiday, and the Christians kind of took it. This was footnoted in some of the books by a man by the name of Grimm, Jacob Grimm, who is one of the Grimm brothers who made the Grimm fairy tales. And he footnoted that and used that as a source to basically say, yeah, see, the Christians stole the holiday. The problem is that there's absolutely no proof of it. If you go back into some of the documentation, you will actually find the oldest manuscripts we have of some of the Celtic traditions go all the way back to the second century. But we find absolutely no mention of any of this until the 15th. And by that time, the idea of Christians and Halloween and all of this, well, it was already pretty much well established. And All Saints' Day, on the celebration of Halloween, had already been established, and the Christians were already dressing up in their weird masks. So, so the idea that we stole it from the Celtics is, I mean, it's a great theory, but it's unprovable at this point. We just don't have any documentation, which means that anybody that actually claims, like, yes, this is exactly where it came from, well, either they're prophetic or they've gotten a source that probably quotes Jacob Grimm somewhere, who quotes Keaton, and then with Keaton you find that there's just absolutely nothing to back it up. So, and to be honest with you, in some academic journals, that's actually how this works. You got one guy who quotes another guy who quotes another guy, and then all of a sudden you're like footnoting this person over here, and that's your proof. Is like you're footnoting it. And the problem is like if you really go back in time, you check. Right. I actually ran into this a few years ago. I was writing a sermon series, and actually it was the sermon series I gave just last year for Lent. I wrote it several years ago, but I actually gave it. It was called the Cursed series. Yes, and I was reading a commentary, and I ran across this quote from Luther. Now I'm a big Luther fan.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe, but I'm a huge Luther fan. And anyway, so I was reading this quote, and it was a really good quote, and it was from a guy I didn't expect. It was, if I remember correctly, is A.W. Tozer, and Tozer at the time was, in his own time, was a pretty well-known and respected scholar. And so I was like, okay, where did this come from? And I tracked it down, and at the end of the day, some guy from again, probably 1920 or something, either A, misread something, or B, made this quote up out of thin air. Because I tracked it about as far back as I could go. I had both seminaries looking into this. I'm not joking. I actually called the research assistant guy at Concordia St. Louis, and I had him looking through it. I had another guy reading through the German edition, and I called Fort Wayne, and I had their library. Everybody was going through, looking for this quote. We could not find it. It just did not exist.
Right.
And that's kind of what was going on. Everybody's quoting it, and so I had to go back 3 times over to find the person who originally quoted it, in like 1920, and again, we just had no idea where it came from.
Yeah. That happens with so much. I mean, especially nowadays with social media. That thing happens now where I see people all the time who they'll state these opinions about something, and depending on if it's a subject I know a lot about, I can be like, yeah, you're quoting this guy who I know you're quoting this specific person, and that person that's just kind of their opinion. It's not an actual fact, but people listen to that person and they kind of it just becomes like everybody quotes it like, well, I heard this one time this guy said.
Yeah.
And then it just evolves into this fact that's not real. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, you see this everywhere. Like, I can't tell you how many shows I've seen where it like quotes, well, it's just a Celtic celebration. And it's like, the history of this whole celebration for the end of summer, this Samhain, or again, I'm butchering the word, but the end of summer, it was actually a lunar thing. Mm-hmm. And even then, it was just to track when the end of summer was.
Right.
And the beginning of fall. And that was what it was all about. Like I said, it didn't even become a holiday until much, much, much later.
Right.
It was a thing earlier, but the earlier thing was just to track the end of a season because it was part of their calendar. Much like we have months, they had months, but they tracked their months based on a lunar calendar, a moon calendar. And so that's kind of where Halloween comes about. Now, I know we've all read some stories about like where trick-or-treating comes from. There's a little bit more of a question as far as like how that came about, but I believe it was people being mischievous, if I remember correctly. But I don't necessarily have a time frame for that. And then I want to actually bring up something else that I think is always funny, and that is this. See, again, going back to the especially the medieval church, but maybe even a little bit before then, they didn't know Latin, and the services were all done in Latin. And, that didn't change until Luther, but not all a lot of times, like if you were in Germany, for instance, you knew German. It was maybe Low German or High German or some variation of your colloquial German, but you didn't know Latin unless you were like well-studied or had grown up attending a school or something.
Right.
And so a lot of people not knowing Latin, they would attend church, but they understood enough because the priest a lot of times would explain enough that they would understand certain things. So one of the things that they understood was the Lord's Supper. The Catholic Church believes in something known as transubstantiation. That is that once the words are spoken, that bread and that wine is Christ's body and blood. There is no bread left. There is no wine left. It is strictly his bread and the wine after the words are spoken. And they would actually even ring a bell. In fact, I think some Catholic churches, maybe all of them, still do. But the Latin for that is this, hoc est corpus meum. And what they would do, and that basically means it's this is my body. Mm-hmm. This is my body is what I just said in Latin. And so what people would do is they would actually go to church, they would listen to the priest say those words, and then they would actually try to go. And a lot of times, if Holy Communion is being celebrated in more churches in a town, they'd actually try to go to the next church and see if they could catch the priest saying it as well, because they thought the words were mystical and magical, and they didn't know what they meant because they didn't know Latin. But imagine if you didn't know Latin and you heard me say that over and over and over again, hoc est corpus meum, you might get a little phrase that kind of comes out of that, or at least what it sounds like that. And that phrase is hocus pocus.
Whoa, okay.
And so what they were doing is they were going around there, the priest would say hocus pocus, and then boom, it's Christ's body. Look, there it is.
Magic trick.
It's a magic trick.
I do love the idea of people back in, like, is this medieval times you're saying?
I think so, if I remember correctly.
Of just people doing like a pub crawl, but it's just communion. Like
it's like church. It's a
church to church. You're like, okay, man, we're hitting up like 6 cathedrals tonight. Let's do it.
Hey, Jimmy, you going to church? We're going to 3 of them.
That would be we should do that sometime. That should be a fun tradition of like, just get a bunch of different. We're just going on a.
That actually would be kind
crawl.
of a fun thing.
It'd be fun,
Yeah, that would be fun.
Well, we'll start talking to the other places. Anyway,
I would. So when I was up in Wausau, Wisconsin, I used to get an occasional Sunday off because we had 2 pastors, and it was like off like they were like, go somewhere else. The whole point was they wanted me to go to another church.
Right.
Like, and so this one time I had a friend of mine, and they invited me to their church. Now, they went to a non-denom church, and I had not been there. And so I went there, and I went to the service, and it was like an hour and a half service. And
welcome to
right. And not once, not one time was the name of Jesus mentioned, was the gospel spoken.
Yeah.
We were I think he was in the book of Judges. So we focused in on like a chapter of Judges that we talked about for that whole time. Mm-hmm. And none of the songs mentioned Jesus.
Yeah.
And I was like, after I got done with that service, I was like, I don't think I've really gone to church. I was like, I need to hear the gospel. Like, and so I went to a Lutheran church, but I couldn't go to my Lutheran church. So I went to the other Lutheran church that was right down the road. So I did. I ended up going to like two services that day.
That's interesting. That's very interesting, because it's like, I think non-denominational churches can sometimes get more into like a Bible study sort of thing. Like, we're doing this book. Yeah, and that's what we're working on. And I mean, they should have songs with Christ in them and stuff. I mean, that's a little odd to me. But maybe they just had a weird week. I don't know.
It was weird. Jesus was not. I mean, because I after the first song or two, I was like, I started tracking. I was like, wait just a second here.
Have you ever seen? Okay, this is a little bit of a side note, but it is a side note. Have you ever heard of the show The Mindy Project?
No.
It's so Mindy Kaling wrote for The Office. She had a show later on. And there's a character who's named Danny in the show, and he's like, it's the joke. He's super Catholic, like super Catholic. So she meets this guy and then finds out he's a pastor at a church. And actually, I think it's a Lutheran church.
Yeah.
And the greatest part, she's like, will you go with me? He's like, sure. I love going to other churches. She's like, really? I wouldn't think you'd want to. You're so Catholic. He goes, no, I love going to other churches. Every time I go, it just makes me more Catholic. And I thought that quote's hilarious. You should have to do like a reaction video on that, because the service, I mean, because when we watched this, like, I don't know, maybe a year ago, it's like I was working at St. John's, and I'm like, there's no way this could be a Lutheran service. And of course, they just threw in like, oh, he's Lutheran. Yeah. And I'm like, there's no tradition, there's no nothing. And like the way he does the sermon, I'm like, there's no way this is Lutheran at all. But anyway, I'll just show you that.
A different synod, right? Definitely not LCMS.
Yeah, definitely not. But so you went to a non-denominational church. We call it the indie Christian scene.
The indie Christian scene. I like it.
Christian scene. And you became more Lutheran.
Yeah, I became more. I went to that service. And I came out of there going, I need to go to church. I did not go to church today.
I didn't go to church.
I didn't go to church today. That's the way I felt. And, and I would say that there was a lot of positives actually from the experience. Mm-hmm. I grabbed some of their paperwork at the front of their door. I was amazed. One of the things that did amaze me, it was like one of the papers that I read, and I'll be honest, I didn't see anybody else grabbing this. But there was like a pamphlet, like not a pamphlet, but it was like
welcome desks.
No, it wasn't even a welcome. It was like, I guess there was something going on, and some people asked some questions about a deep topic, and so there was like this. It was a full page. It was like 5 or 10 pages, but it was like right up my alley. It was like the kind of thing that I would read as a pastor, who's gone through seminary for 8 years. I was like reading this, like, does anybody in this church even understand what's going on in this paper?
This is
I get this. I get this, and like I can appreciate this church actually just laying it out there, going, yeah, there it is. Yeah. Like I actually really appreciated that. I did appreciate, like, even though I was upset that I didn't hear Jesus in the sermon, I actually didn't mind the longer sermon with a purpose, kind of, where he was breaking the verses and stuff apart. Yeah. Like I said, I disagreed with some of his conclusions, but at the same time, it's like there was meat in there. Like there was something to say, So I mean, it wasn't all negative, but it was definitely, it felt more like a Bible study and less like a church.
It is
because again, I didn't hear Jesus.
Well, like my church growing up, our bulletin is like, half of the bulletin was like notes. Like it was like a fill in the blank
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
What is he talking about? Okay, and then you could make little notes and like stuff you want to do. So,
and I've actually looked into that. So the software that I use, that we use, Proclaim and Faith Life and Logos, the softwares, and it's one big company. All of it is combined. They actually have a feature to where I can make all those, like the fill in the blank and stuff. But the problem is that like I've actually read some research, and basically what it comes down to is if you give somebody a fill in the blank, the only thing they'll remember from the sermon is the blanks that they had to fill. That so they're not listening to the rest of what you say. They're only listening to get the answer to fill in the blank, and then once they have that, that's what they that's about the only thing they'll remember.
Yeah,
and so it's one of those things where on the one hand it can help them to focus. On the other hand, it can actually help them to distract them from the rest of the message.
Right. Interesting.
Which is why I've never actually used them. I've actually thought about it here and there, but like...
Right. Well, I think it depends on the person, too, because it's like my mom was the... my mom, I love my mom. She was the type of person that like our pastor who he was there like 30 years or something. He retired a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But he would come up and do a sermon, 45, 50-minute sermon. And then my mom would go, he did that September 12th, like 4 years ago. She made notes in her Bible, so like when she get to it, it's like, oh, he preached on this. Oh, and that's the same anecdote he used, and that's the same. She had everything. It was pretty crazy. So she was listening pretty good.
Yeah. But and again, though, that's how you got to do it. Like writing stuff in your Bible is great, but the fill in the blank sheets, like again, just. And again, I'm not knocking. If somebody uses that and you find it very effective, that's great. But from a research standpoint, I believe that those are pretty well not as effective as what preachers are trying to get them to be.
Yeah, interesting.
So yeah,
I think I guess it also depends on if you're doing a 10-minute sermon or you're doing a 45-minute one too, because. Man, those 45-minute sermons are hard to focus during. I mean, I have a hard enough time with 10 minutes, honestly, because my brain does not stick with things much. But yeah, like for 45 minutes, it's like there's lots of times where you're like, where are we? Okay, I just blanked out for about 10 minutes there, and we're not even halfway through. So
yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest, like I've heard, again, when I was in seminary, I remember. I had several different classes. Being Lutheran, most of my classes were like, okay, keep it to 15, 20 minutes. Right. I've then went off and read a bunch of books, and even the books were like, 15, 20, maybe even 10, 15, maybe even under 10, depending on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to say.
Right.
And I always respected that. But I've also say, like, in some of my last year in seminary, my fourth year, I had a class on expository preaching. And in that class, almost every sermon that we had to listen to, because that's what we basically, we started listening to all these sermons. Our professor would give us certain sermons to listen to, and then we would kind of break them apart. And they were all like 45 minutes to an hour long.
Wow.
And I'll be honest, though, like, some of them were like, okay, yeah, this is super boring. But there were some of them that you got to the end of it and you were just like, is that it? Like, are we finished already? And it was
really?
and the thing was like 50 minutes long.
Wow.
And you're just going, what just happened? Like, it was just really good.
Oh,
and like, so,
amazing.
It really does depend on who's giving the sermon and how they give it. Like, there are some very powerful speakers that are really, really gifted. But the really, really gifted speakers very rarely ramble.
Right, yeah.
And a lot of the Lutheran churches I've seen in my life where the sermons start getting into the 40-minute mark, maybe even the 50-minute mark, there's almost always rambling. and to be honest with you, that's not even a Lutheran thing. Like, I've been to so many different services over my lifespan. I have heard some preachers of all different stripes. And yeah, once you usually start hitting that 40-minute mark, 50-minute mark, it's rambling.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. Like, I remember this one, and the name of the sermon was Blood.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah, right? With a title like that, it's good.
This is good. This is on brand for Halloween. This is good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's very, actually, to be honest with you, the story is horrifying. The story is one with Moses and Sephora, And basically, Moses is like in the desert with the people, and he's about to die.
Oh, gosh.
And basically, the whole thing is he didn't circumcise his child. And so Zipporah cuts the foreskin off of the child and touches Moses with it, and God relents. And that story is in your Bible. Now, what do you do with that story?
Right.
And this guy preached on it for 45 minutes, and I guarantee you, and he was a Baptist. And I mean,
they can talk forever.
I know, but this guy was awesome. I have looked for this sermon again. I've actually looked for it again because I was like, that was a good sermon. Like that he was well spoken. He carried. It was awesome. Here you have like 2 verses of scripture, and this man just talked for 45 minutes on it, and you're left going, I wasn't done yet. You can keep talking. Like, it's just like you're like 45 minutes, and you were just like, you keep going.
Yeah.
Like,
there's people who can do. I mean,
he was gifted, and I like I said, I can't find that. I remember the name of it. I remember what it was about. I remember all of that, and it's like, yeah. And so, never forget. If I ever find that sermon, I'm gonna like record it or something.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorites. Yes, I just said that. I just said that. You guys, everybody out there is like, well, I have favorite songs, and I have favorite sermons, like that I listen to. I have sermons that I listen to once a year.
I would hope so. I would hope so, because that's when I ask like drum students, like high schoolers who come take lessons from me. I go, "Who's your favorite drummer?" And they go, "I don't know." It's like, you've been playing drums for like 7 years, and you don't even know the name of a drummer, and they're like, "No." It's like, okay, how much do you like get into the, because you got to get into like the culture, If you're going to preach, you probably should know about the preaching culture, like the people who preach and what all goes on.
Pastor Schmidt, at the seminary, he was the guy who taught me how to preach, and part of the reason that everybody wanted to get into his classes was because of the way he preached at chapel.
Yeah.
And again, he's one of those guys, like he will preach for 20 minutes and you're just left going, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, not every sermon. He has this one sermon, and he tells this story at the start, and it's like mythological story about this Alaskan woman and basically her attempt to be young and basically sleep with a young man. And the story is so horrible that after you hear that story, I have no idea what he said after that. Like I'm just like, that story is like emblazoned in my mind.
Yeah.
But I will say this, like when we were in class, he taught us about doing that, like having a story at the beginning that's just too much. Like it's too much, and nobody's going to listen to anything else that you have to say. Like, if you have some like super dramatic story, there's a time and place to tell that story, but it's not as a sermon introduction. Because if you tell that super dramatic story at the very beginning of your sermon, everybody else is going to be thinking about that super dramatic story for the next 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You lost everybody. And that's kind of what he did. And, I think all of us as preachers, when you're giving up and giving a sermon, at least once a week, probably at least 48 weeks a year, or maybe not 48, but like 40 or even 35. If you're giving 35 different sermons a year, you're going to have some stinkers, right? You're going to have some that are just bad. Like, didn't quite hit the mark, didn't quite go over right, and it's okay.
Yeah,
So,
even Johnny Carson had bad episodes.
He had bad episodes.
He really did. I mean, you go back, some of those are not great.
I need to do that, because I've never actually it's been a while since I've seen Carson, but every memory I have of Carson is good. It's positive.
Yeah. Well,
so I didn't watch some of those bad episodes, but I'm sure you're right, because everybody has a bad night.
Oh yeah,
right?
I mean,
everybody.
You're putting on a show every night, for how long? It's like, you're gonna have something bad, Yeah. I say this about with like the worship group and stuff, like because some weeks we're not a gigantic church, we don't have 8 drummers and 20 guitar players and stuff like ready to go whenever we need it. So sometimes we have a week where, hey, we just don't have drums this week, And I always say we got to put the cake in the oven, Is there yeast
right.
in it? I don't know. Is there eggs in it? I don't know. We're just going to put it in the oven, and whatever comes out has got to come out. There's just no. You can't sit there and say, let's just, can we just hold church for another hour until a drummer gets here? We can't do that. It starts at the same time, so you just got to bake that cake.
It starts at the same time.
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh man, but yeah, I have some sermons. And I have one sermon that's actually one of my favorites. I've posted it even on Facebook a time or two. That's how much I really love this sermon. But right now I cannot find it for my life.
You should make a playlist of all the your sermons that you like, and then we'll have to post it.
Yeah,
so we can.
Yeah, that's everybody would be like, "What are you doing?"
Well, it's always interesting. I always find it interesting when I get really into a band, and they're like, this band is my biggest influence, and it's a band I've never heard of before, and it's so I go listen to them. It's oh, that's really it's interesting to hear where they came from, because okay, I kind of noticed the little things that they have similar, things that they kind of copied, or so it's interesting. But
I've searcred and I can't find it.
Oh.
I will find it though. I will so find the sermon.
Now, I have one thing. Now, we haven't done this segment in a long time.
Yes.
But I thought with it being Halloween, I'll let some knowledge out that for a while there we had the I'm famous, secretly famous sort of thing.
Yes, you are.
Well, when it comes to Halloween, I'm actually a descendant of Rebecca Putnam, which you may not know who Rebecca Putnam is.
That name does ring a bell.
If you ever read The Crucible, Rebecca Putnam was hung as a witch.
Oh,
and she is and these are. I mean, this was a real, really did happen. All this stuff, and apparently now I'm sure someone's going to be like, she didn't have kids or something. All I know is I'm related to Rebecca Putnam.
Yeah.
And I think a descendant of her.
Sure,
to some degree. So I am technically a descendant of a witch, sort of. So. Even though we never did Halloween.
So never did. Well, I mean, now I know why.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It's in the family. Yeah. It's
right.
Bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But all right. So I think at this point, because this is our Halloween special, and by the way, I thinking the reason I wanted to do the Halloween special tonight and not wait was for a couple reasons. And one was what if people are sitting at home right now and they're thinking, should I even celebrate Halloween? Do I even have enough time to get a costume? The answer is, of course you do. And then you can have enough time to get it and go to trunk or treat.
That's right.
That's right. So
Friday at 5:00.
Yeah, that's right. So we have, that's a, just wanted to really have that. I didn't want to wait till right up to the date. What if something caused us to go askew, or some other big story came up and I didn't want to miss it.
Yeah.
But then I thought, we really do need to talk about candy.
Of course, yeah.
Candy has to be, it's, I get it. We're not supposed to have that much sugar. But let's all be honest here, everybody. You're going to eat some candy.
It's so good.
You're going to eat some candy.
Yeah.
So first on the list, we have to talk about candy bars.
Okay.
Right? Everybody goes for the candy bars. Favorite candy bar, Casey? Favorite.
I mean, of course, that's a really, really challenging one.
That's super challenging.
I think for me, I hope I don't get the name wrong, but 100 Grand.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, every time, and the thing is, I don't see them, they're not the most frequent one.
Yeah.
So when I see it, I'm like, oh, yes, I want one of those. So yeah, 100 Grand is that's been kind of my top choice.
Yeah.
As of.
That's kind of like a whatchamacallit. I haven't seen a whatchamacallit in how long? I'm sure they still sell them at the stores.
Yeah.
I just don't look at them.
Yeah.
Usually the ones I gun for first are either the Reese's Pieces peanut butter cups.
Oh, yeah.
Which I love those. Man, do I love those.
Yeah, those are good.
But then I also love Kit Kats. And it's hard for me to say which one I like more, but I think I'm going to lean towards the Reese's.
Yeah.
I really think I'm going to lean towards the Reese's.
Now, Reese's, there's so much variety now.
Yes.
You got, around Christmas, you got the Christmas trees.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And of course, the
pumpkins
what do they have? Pumpkins
are now, yeah.
And then they have the minis, and they got the big cup. So what for you is if you had
straight up normal peanut butter cup, like that's what I mean. You get the other ones, the chocolate to peanut butter ratio gets askew, and I mean, look, some of them end up being really good, but I like just give me a straight standard peanut butter cup, and that's what I mean. Not even the minis, because the minis, they got too much chocolate on the side almost. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to turn one down.
Right. Oh yeah.
But yeah, just a straight up normal Reese's peanut butter cup.
Right.
All the way.
See, like the pumpkins and the Christmas trees to me are not as good because it's the crunching of the edge, the biting down and it kind of getting that.
Oh,
that's the like enjoyable part to me about a Reese's. I mean, the taste is great too, but there is something about that like crunching down on that chocolate.
Oh,
and
yeah.
when you got that and it's all like curved edges, it's just kind of like
it does. It kind of
tastes good, but it's
It tastes good, but again, and I kind of go back to the point, like and on top of that, the ratio of chocolate to peanut butter is all askew.
Exactly,
and it's like it's not quite the same. It's just not the same. Yeah. Give me a standard peanut butter cup.
Yeah, it ruins the way. It's like now I'm not a gigantic York peppermint patty person, but there's one of the times someone had some and they were like, they gave one to me like, you want one? Sure. And then I went to eat it and they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, you have to. And they put it up to their ear and they just broke it in half right next to their ear and they ate it. And I'm like, what? And so I did it. I'll never not do that because the sound.
Now I need a peppermint patty.
The sound that it makes is just this like, it's like this. I can't replicate it because it's this like this beautiful kind of like it just kind of comes apart. It's like it sounds so good.
I'm kind of mad that I don't have a peppermint patty in my house right now.
We really should have had like a bunch of candy. So we could.
No, we shouldn't.
No, we shouldn't have. But but yeah, no. That's what with York peppermint patty. You break it in half right up next to your ear, and it's this beautiful sound. That's what. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Now I'm gonna do. Definitely gotta. Wow. Changed my life right now.
I'm telling you, if you find one, Now, so what is like I have a couple candy bars that I love.
Yeah.
But most people who are like, oh, you like that? Like, they're always kind of like, oh, no one likes those anymore. Is there a candy bar that you're like, I love these, but people seem to always be like, ugh, those are horrible.
My problem is I don't know a candy bar I don't like. And that is my problem.
Yeah.
Like, even like, we have some over at church. We have some of the Mounds minis, like with coconut.
Yeah. Yep,
I like those too because I like coconut and I like chocolate, and put the two together, and I'm like,
I'm a big. I was going towards. I'm a big Almond Joy Mounds.
Oh
person.
Yeah,
and people,
and that's good too.
Yeah, and almonds. People always go like, "Oh, you like Almond Joys?" And they're always like, "That's an old person like candy." And I'm like, "Oh, well, they're good." So I like coconut though.
Hey. Have you ever had a Werther's Original? That's an old person candy. And you know what? It's still good.
It is still good. I
still sometimes buy a pack of those. They're still good.
Yeah.
So, not knocking old people candy.
I did. Since we're just on the subject of candy, this is fun. I bought, like a while back, I bought a bag of Warheads.
Oh, yeah.
And I have them on my desk. And usually that would be a problem for me, but I'm not like, oh, I got to have a Warhead right now. Every once in a while, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll have one. But, gosh, I love Warheads. Those are they're just and I use that as a metaphor so often in life. And most kids are like, I don't know what that is.
Oh.
I'm like, yeah, because you suffer through the sourness and it's like, whoa, and then it's like delicious candy after that. It's like, because that's like when I teach drums, I'm like, you got to get over that first initial, and, I always use that as a metaphor, and people tend to look at me a little like...
Doesn't that make you feel old?
Yeah, I mean...
It does. Makes you feel old.
Yeah, it's just inevitable at this point. I mean...
I remember passing those things out on the bus back when I was a kid and watching everybody's face.
Oh, yeah. Because they were... I remember... I don't know when they came out. Because I just remember, like, when my family sort of, like, discovered them, you could say.
Yeah.
And we're like, these are crazy. And now we gotta look that up.
Yeah, we're looking at Warheads now at this point. Oh man, Too funny.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Is there any other?
All right. We got to go. See, we've had the candy bar discussion,
Okay.
but now we got to go. We have a couple more. We have a couple more discussions. First of all,
Yes.
candy corn, yay or nay?
No, I can't do candy corn.
You
can.
I can.
I honestly haven't had one for a while. I think the last time I had one though, I was like, no, I can't.
So here's the thing with me. Like, I don't mind candy corn, but, and this is a huge thing. As most people know that know me, I love cooking. Mm-hmm. I have a recipe for candy corn.
You make your own candy corn?
I have not yet.
Melt down.
I have not yet, but I plan to. And maybe this is the year. I've been saying I'm going to do it every time. And like, you know, I'll be honest. I got it from Good Eats. Alton Brown, man, love Good Eats. He has a Halloween episode where he actually does candy corn, and I'm like, I'm going to do that. So going to do that. But part of the reason I want to do it is because I like candy corn. I don't despise it. It's like it is a little waxy. It's a little sweet, but for whatever reason, I still kind of go, it's kind of bad. It's kind of bad. And so I don't mind candy corn. Now, I won't go out of my way for candy corn.
Yeah.
But I don't mind it.
Was that was always around in your childhood?
Oh, yeah. As far as I can remember.
Well, that's why I wonder, if it was something that, because there's things that I will admit that most people probably find disgusting, but I think are delicious because I just grew up with it,
Yeah. Yeah, and then you got the caramel popcorn ball thing.
Oh, those, yes. I was very lucky that, again, we didn't do Halloween, but on Halloween, our neighbor across the street who was, as a kid, I thought she was like ancient, but I think she really was. But she would always make popcorn balls.
Yeah.
And so we would go over there and she would give us all two. And it was legitimately like something where it was like you would only eat part of it because you're only getting it once a year. So you wanted to savor it and not eat the whole thing. But it was like, but you know how they used to candy apples, coated and sugary. It was like that, where it was coated and oh, they're so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Now around in Missouri, Washington, Missouri is where the Happy Apple plant is, and so yes, caramel coated, nut coated apples. Yeah. Big into those. Yeah. Big into those.
Yeah. Just be careful when you're going there. You can't trust anybody.
Nope. Can't trust anybody.
Now, are you into the pumpkins? Because I don't know.
I actually prefer the pumpkins.
Are they? So, do they taste like candy corn? Because honestly, I have not tried one.
To me, they're a little sweeter. They're. Okay. And maybe that's just a ratio difference. I don't know what it really is, but to me, it tastes a little sweeter. I actually prefer the pumpkins over candy corn, but
interesting.
I'll take either one.
Yeah.
Again, not in large doses. It's almost too sweet, but you know.
See, now that's the thing. I'm not gonna name the place because I don't want to get us in trouble. But there's a somewhat local place, you could call it, where a lot of people go around this time of year, and they always have samples. And the samples, you eat them and you're like, that's delicious. I'm getting a whole jar of this stuff. And then you go home and you take 2 big chipfuls of this dip or whatever. And you're like, oh, this is pure sugar. That's why it tasted so good as a sample. But I can only eat 2 bites of this. And then I'm so sick of it, I can't eat any more of it.
Yeah.
And that's happened to me. I finally have gotten to the point where I just won't buy stuff there because I'm it just every time I get something, I eat 3 bites of it, and I'm like, well, this is going in the trash in a week because I just can't eat it anymore. It's it's overload.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man, but yeah. So okay, so candy corn, we got that well established.
Yeah.
Now, so when I was a kid, when we'd go trick or treating back in the day, we always knew the houses where we'd get a full soda.
Oh yeah.
And we always knew where we got the full candy bars.
Yes.
Those were the big things.
Yeah.
Is that still the big thing today?
I think so. I had a friend who they posted, and this was kind of when the pandemic was happening. So they did the whole PVC pipe tube that they would put the candy bar on and go down to the street with kids. They were doing that thing. But it was they're like, it was my dream, my whole life to be that house that has full size candy bars. They talked about it. So I think it still is. I was at Costco today and they have packs of candy and then packs of full size candy bars.
Yeah,
And specifically, I'm sure people who are like, well, I want to be the full candy bar house. I don't want to,
There was this, in Beaufort, Missouri, we didn't have exactly a lot of places to go trick or treating, but there was this one house that was a little out there. You had to walk probably a good half mile down the street.
Yeah.
Before when I mean down the street, I mean like. There's no more houses. There's no more lights. Like you are just walking in the middle of the country,
right?
You know. And anyway, we used to all walk to this house because they gave us full candy bars.
They probably knew, hey.
Well, they probably didn't get a lot.
Kids
right?
are walking out here,
right?
Like, it's really probably pretty dangerous, so we might as well.
These guys are walking 5 miles.
Yeah. It's where, So, the full, I think that's still a thing. I don't know so much with like sodas.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't hear too many people. Every once in a while, there's somebody who does like a homemade, like.
Well, I will say this. So, like, this is the thing, though. Like, sodas right now are they're just everywhere. Like, and I mean, look, I don't know what your history is, in terms of this, but like, when I was a kid, like a soda a week, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And then I had to split it with my sister. Like, it wasn't like, it was like that was it. Like,
right.
I remember we used to go whenever I was finally old enough to walk up to the store. Now that's actually the store was like quarter mile, half mile away, something like that, whatever. Sometimes I had to walk through the woods. Yeah. Welcome to Missouri, right? We got hills and trees and stuff. But anyway, but I was able to, they had a soda machine. Now, if I put the quarters in just right and I hit the button and I timed it just right, I get 2 sodas.
Wow.
Yeah, right?
You figured that out?
Yeah.
How did you figure that out?
Practice.
Did someone tell you, like, hey, if you can, like...
It was on an accident. Like, I kept hitting the button, and then all of a sudden one time an extra soda came out.
Oh, man. So you're like, oh, I got to do this again.
But here was the problem, though. It was only one flavor.
What flavor was it?
Well... I'm trying to remember exactly what flavor it was, but I want to say it was grape.
It's like, was it like not specifically your favorite, but you're like 2?
Yeah, exactly, right? You get 2,
yeah,
right. And the soda brand name was Vess, and I don't even know if they're still in business.
I don't know.
They were not. I mean, they were kind of like the generic brand back in the day.
Yeah.
Again, maybe it was just a Missouri soda. I have no idea, but yes, you would hit the Vess machine. You were able to get 2, I think it was purple or grape sodas, but you had to wait a few seconds and hit the button again. Only worked with grape. Only worked if you hit the button, and it was like I said, pure by accident.
Yeah.
But after a while, you started figuring out the timing. You're like, if I hit this button at exactly this time, I get 2 sodas.
Man, the people restocking that have to be like, man, people love grape soda. This is insane.
Right. I didn't think grape was this popular, but.
Man, it's weird. I don't feel like we have enough quarters, but I don't know. It seems like people are buying stuff. So.
Yeah, it was Vess.
Yeah.
It was Vess soda. They were so generic. But yeah, I mean, like that, like so, like for me, getting a soda, like going on trick or treating, getting a soda was a big deal. Mm-hmm. Like, I got a soda. Like nobody had soda. Like, that was for me. That was a big deal. So like going to the house and finding the house that gave the full sodas. Oh yeah, buddy.
Interesting. Yeah,
that was where it was at.
Yeah.
Full-size candy bar and a soda.
That's pretty impressive. I don't know. Maybe someone at Trunk or Treat should start bringing that back and just start handing out sodas. See what
handing out sodas.
Now, any other? Again, I don't know too much. I really don't know much about Halloween. So,
well, I mean, I think we're right now we're on the candy bit. So
yeah,
we got to ask ourselves: is there any other candy? What, again, we've handled the candy corn. We've handled the candy bars.
Yes.
What else we got? What other candies are we got? Look, Halloween is candy time.
That's right.
We get our candies.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of candies do you like? Let's face it, there's some throwaway candies, right? You get that bubble gum that's
I've never
in the
been
yellow
into that.
pack, and it's like, hard as a rock.
That's
like, look, I understand they come in variety packs, but other than that, we don't need that nonsense.
Yeah. The gum
it loses its flavor in like 2 bites.
Yes, it's not great. Well, and for some reason for me, gum is one of those things where like once every like 4 years, I'll be like, I kind of feel like having some gum.
Yeah.
And I'll have like a pack of gum. And over the course of like a week, I'll chew through it. And then I won't have gum for like another 4 years.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's just something where I just don't really get into it that much. And every once in a while, I don't know.
Every now and again.
You know. So, gum, that was never the double bubble or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it's called.
I never got into that.
Yeah. I don't want to put Smarties on here. Like Smarties, boy, when you're in the mood for Smarties, they can be fun. They can be great. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of times those are kind of throwaway too. It's like you get too many of them.
There's a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, you just get too much of them. So like not a big. I'll eat a Smarties.
They do taste good, but I just have when I eat them, I go, this is just a block of sugar. Like it's not even like a
absolutely.
You know, because like I can
spoken like a true adult.
Yeah, I know, right?
Block of sugar.
It's like I can eat like gummy worms and just be like, well, I know they're probably not great for me, but these are good. You know, but when it's just literally like chalky sugar, it's just sugar. There's something about that you do feel a little bit like, how old am I? You know, that's how it does feel a little bit like that. But
yeah. Oh man,
I do now because I'm from Washington, Illinois. We have Holland's, which is a candy store there.
Okay.
And it's like old fashioned, like jars, like those like side jars with the lids.
Oh yeah.
You get the scoop and stuff. And my go to was always like anything that was like the gummy, gummy bears, and like they have like gummy eggs that looks like an egg or something. You know, like all the different stuff.
Okay,
like
so now that brings about a two-parter.
Oh, okay.
It's a two-parter question.
Yeah.
First of all, black licorice?
I mean, I'm not like greatly opposed to it, but it's not really like a go-to, you know?
I love black licorice.
I haven't had that. I honestly have not had black licorice in a really long time, so I really can't even tell you.
Love that anise flavor. Just love it.
The thing that it was weird to me, now this isn't, but when I was working at the concert venue, we had a whole concert that was endorsed by Jägermeister.
Oh yeah,
and I was like, I don't know anything about Jägermeister. I mean, I don't drink, so I was like, oh, Jägermeister. I'm like, what is that like? And they're just like, oh, it's like black licorice. I'm like,
yeah,
is that popular? I didn't know that flavor was so popular that there's a whole drink just like, yeah, this is black licorice flavored.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, I love it. And
see, now this is where. This is where I share my knowledge, and I'm a little embarrassed because I have this knowledge to share. But I, to be honest with you, I think I've had maybe one drink of Jägermeister in my life, so I'm not a huge fan. But yet, at the same time, I can honestly tell you that, like absinthe, for instance, tastes a lot like black licorice. Now it's got a much higher like alcohol content, and it's kind of green. But it's made from like a wormwood or something like that. It's a weird liquor. Let's just put it that way. They used to dump it over like sugar cubes and stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Got a weird history too. But it tastes a lot like licorice. So
yeah, I have not ever drinking Jägermeister, but I did for a period of time have a lot of Jägermeister swag because they just handed stuff out, and I'm admittedly I come from. My grandmother on my mom's side was a bit of a kleptomaniac, not because she had to be, but because she just wanted the thrill of it.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, this is also a woman who battled MS most of her life, and just like she was a bit nuts. Like I'll be honest, and she just wanted to see if she could do it. It wasn't like I don't know why. So she tried to steal like a box of cigarettes or something. So I don't steal, but when there are freebie things out there, my DNA is like, you got to grab something from that table. You got to get as much as you can from that table.
I don't think you're abnormal in that.
Yeah. And so I had like Jägermeister like sunglasses and little shot glasses with the Jägermeister. And
I'm just trying to envision you with all this Jägermeister stuff.
Yeah, I'm in my apartment and it's like everything's like Jägermeister. I did end up because I worked at the Conklin Dinner Theater for a while, and there were some guys who worked in the back, and they were like, they talked about Jägermeister like every night. I don't know why. And so eventually I was like, hey, I got like Jägermeister hats and gloves, and like also I'm like, you guys want those? They're like, yeah, man, we'll take them. So I'm like, I I'm walking around with, a hat that says Jägermeister. People are like, oh, Jägermeister. I'm like, I've never had it. So, yeah, I was like, it's probably better I just give these away. So
that brings me to the next question, which I know we're going all the way back to the black licorice question.
Okay.
Because now we got to go, okay, so you're red licorice.
Sure.
Red vine.
Oh.
Or just red licorice.
I will be honest, I didn't... Like red vine. See, now this is like, you're a Twizzler family.
Twizzler or red vine. That's why I couldn't think of the word Twizzler. That's what I was looking for. Twizzler, red or red vine. Which one is it?
I do like, we were a Twizzler family basically through and through. And then I think it was because I watched an episode of Parks and Recreation where they literally, she was meeting like his parents and they're like, we're a red vine family or whatever. And I was like, what are red vines? And I looked up like, oh, I've never had those. So I tried them and I think if I was between the two, I would get red vine.
I'll be honest. I'm going to agree with you on this one.
Yeah.
I love Twizzlers, but I like red vines a little bit more.
To me, there's like an aftertaste.
Yeah.
That's like this weird, like it kind of lingers in your mouth. And I kind of like that. I don't know. It's weird, but I like that. Yeah.
I like it. I do. I really do. I have to be honest. I like it. So I just do.
They're good. Oh, man.
Red vine. That's where it's at.
It is. Now, I will say with Twizzlers, when it's the pull apart Twizzler, those are really
now
good.
That's a whole different story.
That is a different thing.
That's a game changer right there where they pull apart like that.
They kind of made the Twizzler better.
They did.
It really is much
better.
They
did.
Yeah.
They came in like ropes almost. Like it's fun.
And that was my go-to all through like high school when I would go on trips. And it was like, okay, you got to buy like some snacks, for your trip so you have something. So I'd always buy like a pack of the pull apart like licorice, like Twizzlers. So good. So
again, I remember when I was a kid, we'd go to the skating rink and we only went, again, like I get all nostalgia and stuff, but like I went to the skating rink like once a year. Like it's not like I made it like a bunch, but like I remember they had the pull apart, but like it's a real long one. So like, like super long. And like, that was like the only place you could get it. And it was like Twizzlers pull apart, but it was like super long. And I remember that's where I'd go for that.
Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff.
Only place you could get it.
Yeah.
Only place.
I do remember when we would go to like the public pool and they came out with sour Skittles. We would eat sour Skittles like almost to the point our mouths would bleed, because they tear up your mouth, like, big time, but they're so good. So you're sitting there and you're like, oh man, I can tell like my mouth is starting to hurt, but you're like, but I just want to finish the pack. It's so good, and you just it's hard to stop. So
oh my goodness gracious.
You did bring up in church.
Yes, I did.
Say this.
Yes,
you brought up pumpkin spice.
I did.
I even wrote it down during church because I'm like, I want to talk about this because what is your opinion on the pumpkin spice?
Okay, so a couple people asked me different things, and here's my thing. So, well, first of all, I'm just going to get this out there right now. Pumpkin spice beer is gross. It is gross. I even tried to make one once. I wanted to make everybody happy. I thought everybody liked pumpkin. I made a pumpkin beer, and I put a very tiny amount of pumpkin spice in said beer, and all you could taste was pumpkin spice. Like, it just overwhelmed everything. And I didn't even put that much in. Yeah. I remember I put like I put such a small amount for 5 gallons of beer, and it was just like it overwhelmed everything. Every now and again, if like somebody gives me a pumpkin spice beer, I can take a few drinks out of it, and it'll be like okay. But like that's about all I can handle. Dump it down the drain after that.
Yeah.
Pumpkin spice like lattes and all that kind of stuff. To be honest, that's again one of those sugar things. Like if for me, I'm just going to drink a cup of coffee, and I don't need all the sugar, the whipped cream, the this, the that, the next thing. I will eat pumpkin pie.
Oh well, that's like that's the traditional.
I like pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie. There's nothing wrong with pumpkin pie. Come on.
Yeah. Well, people start talking about pumpkin spice and all this kind of stuff. Like, well, I don't like like, and even the coffee, I mentioned, because I mentioned this in my sermon, that I made the pumpkin spice coffee. Even the coffee wasn't actually all that terrible.
Yeah.
Now it still wasn't my favorite. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I'm just not a huge pumpkin spice fan because it does just overwhelm everything. But the coffee was pretty even keel. I thought. It didn't overwhelm. Don't know how they got it to do that, but whatever. It didn't overwhelm. But even so, it just kind of registers some of those memories, man, of times when it overwhelmed. So I can't say that I'm a huge pumpkin spice supporter in this regard.
Okay, I got you.
I just can't. Sorry.
It's okay. I understand. I will say for me, you can call me they say how I don't want to get too political, but like the typical college girl loves their pumpkin spice. I'm pretty here's the thing though, is I don't drink beer and I don't really do coffee or lattes or anything. So I don't do the pumpkin spice latte. I do, however, a pumpkin spice muffin. Oh, but that's different. Anyone who makes pumpkin spice muffins, I will gladly make a chart this year of who has the best. That is just a ploy for me to get free pumpkin spice muffins.
I feel like that's a challenge. Wait, now hold on. We gotta take a break here. I know we're getting over time already, but I can't help it.
But we need a break,
dude. You brought up
You brought up
pumpkin spice muffins, so just pumpkin muffins.
Yeah, well, pumpkin muffins.
I mean, it all has
some
nutmeg and stuff like that.
Yeah, some people call it pumpkin spice, but pumpkin muffins.
Now, so now let's hear your favorite. What's all in there? Like walnuts, pecans? What do you got in there? You got nuts? No nuts?
I mean, the way my mama made it is really just a straight up. It's just a pumpkin muffin. There's no nuts. There's no anything. It's just
no nuts,
flavored.
no chocolate chips.
I mean, I wouldn't say no to a chocolate chip. I'll say
hold on, because I feel like you're bringing out my competitive edge now. Okay. I'm going okay, okay. I feel like some muffins need to be made here.
Yeah.
And because I do, I every year I get a fresh pumpkin or two, a field pumpkin, and I process it, so I have freezer, so I have lots of pumpkin in the freezer, So in fact, I still have one more pumpkin to go to get more. But I mean, the point of the matter is I can make some pumpkin muffins. But I feel like so do you like the nuts in them? Do you not like the nuts in them? I feel like some challenges is going down right now.
Well, the thing is, if there's nuts, they've got to be soft enough that it's not taking away. Because if you're biting into a pumpkin muffin, it feels like you're crunching into a peanut, like a hardcore peanut.
Right.
I'm that's too much. I don't want it to take away from the pumpkin.
Okay, chocolate chips, white chocolate or regular chocolate or dark chocolate?
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? We got questions. We got questions. We need answers.
I mean, I don't know. That would be something I could. I would try all of them.
Well, now I see the challenge. I see the challenge as it stands before us. I see what I have to do. We're gonna have to fix this. We will figure that. Casey.
Yes.
Fear not. We are gonna solve this riddle. You put a riddle. You put a riddle right in front of me. I didn't know it was
a riddle.
You put a riddle right in front of me. We're gonna have to figure this out.
Full disclosure: I was just hoping a bunch of people in the church would make me pumpkin muffins and just be like,
"Dude, we've got to figure this out. What kind of chocolate chips do you want in your pumpkin muffin?"
Oh, I mean, that's hard to know. I mean, milk chocolate's pretty much inevitably pretty great.
We got to know. There's only one way to discover the truth.
Now, I love white chocolate, but I don't know if white chocolate, I've never thought about that with pumpkin before,
Maybe I'll put all three in. You don't know.
Who knows?
What's going to happen?
I don't know what's going to happen.
Nobody knows what's going to happen. I feel like a challenge is going to be done.
Okay, I'm all for it. Yeah. I will eat pumpkin muffins all day.
Hey, we got to do what we got to do. You know what I'm saying? We just got to, that's what we got to do.
Yeah. But I'm all for. See, I'm happy with that. The one thing I will say is the Dairy Queen pumpkin blizzard. I'm always for that. I always got, but I don't.
I can't say as I've ever had that.
I like it, but I do know nutmeg because the nutmeg on top. I don't know. I just am not. It's kind of. It's it really just tastes like pepper, and it's like pepper with pumpkin. I don't know about that. So.
Yeah, I don't just despise nutmeg or anything, but again, I like the pumpkin spice stuff. It just that's my thing. It just overwhelms everything else. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like if it's done right, you should be able to taste the other flavors.
Right.
Whatever that is. And I feel like with like the beer or the coffee or with it, most of the time, the pumpkin spice just completely takes over. I went back to my Dune days, like the spice must flow. Anyway.
I just watched that on Netflix.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
We won't get into that right now.
Yeah. Well, different topic, different time. The spice must
when
flow.
we have our Dune episode.
Yeah, so. Yeah, right. We need a Dune episode, a special episode dedicated to Dune. Anyway, love that book. So, all right. So I think it's time to officially move over to Church Chatter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you already said the trunk or treat.
The trunk or treat is going on this week at the school, like on Friday. So we got that to look forward to.
5 to 7.
Right, we have our Harvest Fest coming on the 29th.
Whoop, whoop.
That's Reformation Day. We have our voters meeting at 7 p.m. for those of you that would like to hear about the things that are going on. We have an organ concert.
All right.
By the way, I was at school board tonight, and somebody said something about the organ thing going on at church, and I completely misheard them, and I was just like, what organ thing? I want both my kidneys. But no, it was the organ concert that's coming up on November 4th at, I think it's like 7 p.m. So we have a lot of activities kind of going on at church right now. And of course, we still have all the other things that have been going on for some time going on. I'm trying to think, if there's any questions that really have been coming up at church, and I can't say that there are. I know one of the big things that Bill mentioned is that we have the angel tree names, and we have 40 names, so that was a big thing. So yeah, we got like a lot of the. Actually, it's kind of exciting because we are getting into that holiday season, and that's always a little bit exciting.
I love it.
Bill and I talked, was it today or yesterday, about decorating the church and how we need to start getting ready for that. And that's just exciting to me.
Yeah,
We're getting ready to move on into the Advent season and all that. I mean, a little early. We haven't even had Halloween yet.
Right, okay.
We haven't had Thanksgiving yet. So, yeah, we haven't had any of those things yet. But it's still exciting to think about. It's coming. Yay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I will say, unless you have anything else.
No, I'm boring.
I will say, because I've been, for a couple weeks, felt really bad about this. But literally tonight, I made chicken noodle soup with the noodles. And it was quite delicious. And I will say, the thing I did not really expect was the smell while you're cooking it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of flour in the bag.
Yeah.
And so when you throw it in, you're cooking up the noodles and stuff, it smells like you just made, like you were making like a loaf of bread or something.
Yeah.
Like there's that doughy, and that was like, man, this smells good.
Right.
It was really good. And I will say this, I'm a terrible cook, I think, because I made it and I had all the chicken shredded, and I started eating, I'm like, oh man. And it wasn't the noodles. It was just like, man, this is like not a lot of flavor. And then I went back to what my mom's main, well, my family, I should say, what they do is they just put about 3 pounds of salt into every recipe. And so which I'm actually not big on. I'm not a big salt guy. Yeah. So I was like, fine, but this is so bland. So I just poured like a little bit of salt into it. And it was like, this is the most delicious thing I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
It was so good. And so I have had them now.
Yeah.
And delicious.
There you go.
Absolutely delicious. I made so much soup, I have to freeze half of it. But I'm definitely,
See, and I actually made soup the other day myself. Again, I used half of a bag of noodles, and I used the other half. But yeah, I made soup the other day, and I always I make some of my own broth. So I use one thing of my homemade broth, and then I use one thing of low sodium broth, because broth has a lot of sodium in it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what gives my salt. Gives me a lot of salt. So yeah. So yeah.
Very good. Now I can myself endorse the noodles
and you're
at the bazaar.
Yes, absolutely. And they're good. I'm like, right?
They are really good, yeah.
Like, I know, like we say, it's like, what church makes their own noodles? Well, our church does. And it's awesome that they do that. But yeah, it's just, you're expecting like cinnamon rolls or something like pecan pie, but it's like, it's noodles.
Yeah.
They make like the greatest noodles ever.
Which now I think next time when I run out, which I have one more bag.
Yeah.
But when I run out, I think next time I like make pasta, I'm just gonna dump like some flour in the pot just so I can smell like, oh yeah, it's it smells really good.
Bread.
Yeah, it smells really good. So
right on.
That's a little thing I didn't expect. But.
That's awesome. Glad to hear you have a glowing endorsement of the noodles.
That's right.
Fantastic. You'll be like the first in line next year.
Yes, I will.
To get all the noodles.
Yeah, because some people are quite vicious. I'm not going to name names because I actually don't know who they were. But they were getting down to the last couple, and someone came in with a box, and they took like 8. And I'm like, there's like 20 left. What are you doing? Yeah. And they just were like, I don't care.
I don't care. We got noodles. We got noodles.
Could care less. They're like, I'm taking them anyway. So, yeah.
That's right. Well, they're good.
They are good.
They're good noodles.
They're good.
That's actually that's a good note to leave on because that's all I have.
Yeah,
and that's all we have. So thank you everybody for joining us this week, and God's blessings to all of you. And we'll hear from you soon. Bye.